Welcome to the game. The category is the year 2001. Alex Tirapelle, your first question is this. On November 27, 2001, the Hubble telescope detected sodium in the atmosphere of an exoplanet for the first time. Which exoplanet was it?
Ooh, a hard one out of the gate. I believe that was HD 209458B.
Very good. Okay, Alex, your second question. In 2001, which physicist won the Nobel Prize in Physics?
Oh, now you're jerking my chain. That's a trick question. There were actually three winners that year. It was Eric Cornell, Wolfgang Ketterl, and Carl Wyman.
Very, very good, Alex. Your final question is this. Which pair of wrestling brothers won a national high school championship and NCAA championship in 2001?
Well, that was Adam and Alex Tirapelle, for sure.
Alex Tirapelle, NCAA finalist, Big Ten champion times two, all-time Illini leader in wins with 128, one more than Adam Tirapelle, two-time All-American, four-time NCAA qualifier, number four in Illini career win percentage at age 77, Big Ten All-Academic selection all 4 years, degrees in accounting and sports management, and a first-team All-Academic honoree, team captain. You were part of two of the three top scoring Illini teams at the NCAAs and Big Tens. What was that like, Alex?
Oh, I mean, that was fantastic. I mean, quite an experience. I mean, from start to finish, it wasn't just about, kind of where we finished those seasons, but just, competing with those guys, getting to know them, building those relationships, with teammates and the coaching staff, like just some really enjoyable years to look back on.
Well, you had not only your own talent, but you had talented teammates, which doesn't always happen. Sometimes you have a superstar and then the rest of the squad, but you were a superstar, but you were surrounded by other stars as well, and that had to feel pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say that you want to surround yourself with like-minded people, and I was very fortunate to come through. We had a time when Mark Johnson and Jim Heffernan and the rest of the staff had put together a group of guys that yeah, had really serious wrestling goals and had a lot of ability as well. I mean, I was definitely, I mean, fighting my butt off, as much in the practice room as I was when we went to compete.
Well, we always like to ask our guests, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. Hmm. I
And
feel
it
like
can be
it's
more than one.
Yeah, I feel like it's changed over the years, right? As you like mature. I mean, when I was a kid, it was probably Ace Ventura, you know. Then in like college, I think it was probably Dumb and Dumber because it was funny and it was like always on TV. And like now, I think I probably have to say maybe like Shawshank Redemption, just for like
Yeah.
the quality. But yeah, it's kind of changed over the years for sure.
And your favorite cartoon as a child, Alex?
Oh, that's an easy one. My favorite cartoon as a child was the X-Men animated TV series, which is awesome that they just rebooted on Disney Plus as X-Men 97. So really excited about that.
When did you start wrestling?
That's a tougher one. My dad was my teacher and a coach, was my coach, in both middle school and high school. So we grew up, me and my brothers, in the wrestling room. And I don't really, that line's kind of blurred of when you were like just kind of, running around the wrestling room and like bouncing off the walls and like playing on the ropes to like, all of a sudden like you're participating. Like it just kind of gradually happened. I don't know if my dad, intended it to be that way, but that's how it is in my mind. So it's hard to say because I was always in the wrestling room. But I would say if I had to peg it a year, we moved down to from Sacramento area to Clovis area when I was going into seventh grade, and that was a big move for me because that was the first year I got to like wrestle and compete like for my school. So I would say that's when it was like maybe I like formally started, but yeah, was in the wrestling room for many years before that.
Well, you were tagging around with Adam, probably bothering him to death. And then after you came Troy, and he was tagging around you, bothering you to death. So you had the Tirapelles, the kings of California wrestling, all in the same room. So was that fun or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was fun. I would say I probably, obviously close with, both my brothers and my, sister, now. But my older brother, we're about 5.5 years apart. So growing up as kids, most of the time, like different stages of life, right? Like as I was kind of moving into the next stage, he was kind of vacating it. So yeah, we were close in that we were brothers, but maybe not as close. Whereas me and my younger brother only 2.5 years apart. So maybe a little, a little closer to the same stages of life. So maybe related a little bit better, like younger. So I think I was probably closer to my younger brother growing up. And then when I went to college, Adam had just graduated, just finished, was working on his MBA as I was starting my undergrad, and we probably, got closer, during those couple of years that I was fortunate enough to have him there.
Also, you had a distinguished, very distinguished high school career, three-time Cali champ. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
And then there was also the Dapper Dan Team USA Dream Team. What was your high school career like?
High school career, I would say it's kind of an evolution. Like I started out, so yeah, I did end up winning the state tournament 3 times. But what a lot of people don't know is my freshman year, like I actually, I didn't wrestle the state tournament. In fact, I got bounced out, I think like, 2 rounds like before that, in like our what would maybe call like a subsection, right? Subsection section state tournament. And I remember that year being very like humbled, like, slash borderline like embarrassed, coming out of like my freshman year where it's like, man, like I'm not even wrestling at the state tournament, and that was a big, like, I feel like wake up call and kind of slap in the face where, kind of over the summer, that was, I mean, the first summer that like felt like I was really like committed to what I was doing, where I was doing strength training. I mean, I was, doing wrestling, I was doing stuff all summer, and then came back and, obviously, I mean, I had a good year. I mean, we certainly could have not won it that year, but, was fortunate enough to. And so, yeah, it was just a big jump for me. And then I think that kind of opened doors or opened my mind a little bit to, the possibilities and like, okay, maybe like I could do this at the next level.
That's it. Tirapelle holds on with the third period rideout, and by a 4-2 score, he is the National High School Wrestling Champion. Second place to Philip Simpson from Tennessee.
Okay, we're here with Alex Tirapelle, and he's taking this family affair to a different level now with a national championship with his brother in the corner. How's it feel? Congratulations.
Feels really great. Just real fortunate. Worked out hard all year, and it just happened to pay off. It's been a pretty good year for the Tirapelle family. Got to watch my brother at the NCAA's. Real proud of him, and things just fell into place. Just real happy.
Pretty excited about your college career coming up, going to Illinois?
Yeah, Illinois program's on the rise. I mean, they had 2 national champions last year, so I'm excited.
I didn't know that you got to be with him at University of Illinois while he was doing his MBA. Was he also a volunteer assistant coach?
He was working in the athletic department. He was doing his MBA, and then he was competing too. He wrestled a little bit internationally for a couple years after he finished. So yeah, 2 years of schooling. And yeah, no, I'm very thankful for that. So I'm definitely, I mean, pretty tight like family person, and going off to college is it's a big deal, right? And for
and
California,
traveling halfway across the country.
Yep.
Well,
and now I was fortunate enough that I had the opportunity, because through Adam, I had the opportunity to meet, the coaches and some of the guys on the team. So it wasn't like, totally unfamiliar, but it was just nice, yeah, to have Adam there, so if anytime, I needed someone, I knew, I had family close.
Well, then you had your brother Troy on the team with you, and that was part of those big, high scoring NCAA and Big Ten teams. And that must have been very cool to walk out onto the NCAA mats, the Big Ten championship mats, with your brother and warm up together.
Yeah, I would say it was awesome all the way up to like the start of competition. Troy, I think like took a lot out of me. Like he stressed, not through no fault of his own, stressed me out. Like, with him competing while I was competing, like it was easier while I was just competing, I could be focused on myself, be cheering on my teammates, but not like, as emotionally invested. Whereas, yeah, when my younger brother was wrestling, there was a couple of times I know, Coach Heffernan, more than a couple probably, had to kick me out of the gym because I was getting too into some of Troy's matches, and it was draining me physically. So the second half of the first year he started competing, I think I stopped watching him compete. But I did enjoy having him on the team, and I enjoyed practice and training with him, and traveling and going to competitions. But yeah, when it came time to compete, I needed to try and convince tell myself that he wasn't competing, because it allowed me to relax a little more.
Well, that was a very cool story because, I mean, siblings, brothers, you guys were brothers in arms too. You were out there wrestling for the team.
Mhm.
Now, I wanted to talk about your 2003 NCAA tournament because you went on a bit of a heater there, uh, finished seventh in the Big Ten. And I think at that time, I've seen an interview where you said that you had to finish seventh just to make the NCAA tournament. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I went into the Big Ten. Can't remember what I was seated. I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5, somewhere around there. But I felt like, hey, I was like, yeah, like I can win this tournament. I'd beaten some of the guys. Trying to remember the kids' names. I'd beaten the Michigan State kid. It was pretty good. I had a good match with the Michigan kid. So I felt like, hey, I have it. I'm going in thinking that I'm going to win the tournament. And lo and behold, I end up, wrestling, for my spot, to wrestle at the NCAA tournament. So, right, it's just a very different shift from, what your mindset is going in. And that's a credit to, the conference and the other teams in those days. I mean, it's just, and today as well. I mean, like there's, it's just different. Tell high school kids this all the time now is in my profession is that like, it's a different level. It's a different intensity level, right? If you aren't on top of your game, if you don't bring your A game every time, like you can get beat like by anybody. Like, I mean, these are the best, wrestlers in the country. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, also, although you were finished seventh in the Big Ten, you did have a nice record, and they gave you the ninth seed at the NCAA tournament, which seems pretty strange because you finished seventh at the Big Ten. But the conference is so tough. You had such a good year, they had to reward you with that.
you know,
But you took that ninth seed, and in the quarterfinals, you beat the number one seed, Luke Becker. Can you tell us about that match?
Yeah, I mean, what I can remember of it, I mean, I felt good going into the match. I hadn't wrestled Becker before, but you usually played to my strengths a little bit. And being young, just being a freshman, first time there, like I just feel like you kind of I don't know if you have more to prove, or you're just naive enough to think that like you're always going to win, right? And you just step on the mat, it's like well, I'm definitely going to win, like, and you kind of work from there. But I mean, it was a really heated contest. Weren't able to no I was able to score, like, I mean, take down any offensive points. We're both able to get away from each other. A couple of almost scores. I thought I had him one time. It ended up going out of bounds. It ended up going to the tiebreaker, which I wasn't a big fan of, actually, because I was really good on the mat. And I never really wanted to go to the tiebreaker because I was never sure like what I would pick, if I would pick like, top or bottom, because like it's like, well, I'm really good at holding people down, but in those 30-second tiebreakers, it's really hard to stop them off the whistle. So we have the tiebreaker, and lo and behold, I have to start on bottom, and I'm not the most, explosive, guy at all. I'm not fast twitch at all. So most people, then and now, explosive stand up off the whistle in those tiebreaker starts. No, so I think Becker was anticipating that, and I'm like an inside pivot, start off the start. So whistle blew, and I inside pivot like to get my hips underneath me, and he went to lock his hands, expecting me to come up, to go explosive stand up. And lo and behold, he got his penalty for locked hands, and like that was the match. So it was kind of a like
Well, he was the
anti.
defending champion as well.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
was. Yeah.
like you, he had a great, great, great career. You guys meet in the quarterfinals, and that's your freshman year too. So you're wrestling a guy with a lot of experience, great credentials, and you come up with a smart win. And that's where I'm going to get into Satiev. I always took my kid to watch you wrestle at Huff Hall, and we love the fact that, or at least I did, he just, was like to run around and bounce off walls. But I love the fact that you were very technical. And I always thought that you reminded me of the Russian Satyev with your 2-on-1, which they called the Russian back then, because he was very technical. He didn't look explosive. He wasn't really too explosive, but he was explosive actually. Uh, but he was very, very technical. So is that the kind of wrestler you see yourself as?
Oh man, I wouldn't have the gall to compare myself to Steve. He was fantastic. I mean, he was, I mean, not only like you said, I mean, a technical wrestler. And although, yeah, from the outside, people looking at him may have thought like he wasn't athletic, but man, he was explosive. I mean, he was wiry, strong. Like, I mean, he was an absolute beast. I mean, you try and steal, things from guys that are, at that level, but heck, I would say probably, 50% or more of what he did, like I physically, was not able to do. But the things that I could take, that, hey, I might be able to do that. Like, you try to add that into your repertoire. But he was fantastic. I mean, in my mind, I mean, it's hard to think of someone else, but I mean, like probably the best wrestler ever. I mean,
Yeah. Well, then back to your 2003 heater. You're next in the next round in the semifinals. You have the number 4 seed, and you end up beating that guy too. Can you tell us about that match?
yeah, from what I remember, that was Scott Owen. He was wrestling at Northern Illinois. He was having a good year. I think he had a win over Becker that year. So, I mean, yeah, two really good guys. I mean, Becker had a really good career. I mean, I watched him, win the national championship, the year before. So definitely, I mean, very experienced, had been there, very established. Owen was having a good year. Again, kind of a low scoring affair. I don't think there was in the first period. I don't think there was any real close score. No, that's not true. He did almost take me down. I can't remember if that was in the first period. The first half of the match, he caught me reaching and actually hit me with a double leg and dropped me like to my butt. And I actually don't know how, but somehow or other I was able to get my arm like under one of his arms and hip heist like as I hit and not give up points. Definitely couldn't do that today, but back then, it worked out. So it was a low scoring affair. He ended up going down like most wrestlers do, right? You get that escape point after I had gotten out. And I remember I far side cradled him as he was coming up. I caught him in a far side cradle and put him on his back for 3. And that, I mean, kind of was the match at that point. I think I held him down for the majority of the period, maybe got away, near the end of the period. But yeah, that was kind of, the move of the match, so to
Well, that
speak.
was smart wrestling too. Alex Tirapelle is a smart wrestler. That's what I always thought. Uh, Now, tell us about your college days. Do you have any stories? Your teammates, your coaches? Tell us about that.
I was very fortunate. My college days. I mean, I look back. I mean, fondly on those years. You always appreciate them later, right? When you're in the thick of it, when you're in the grind of it. I mean, I had fun then. I was a happy person. I enjoyed, college wrestling and college, but you don't fully appreciate it, until you can step away from it, and look at it from a little bit different lens. Um, for me, I mean, yeah, we had outstanding coaches. Mark Johnson, Jim Heffernan, Carl Perry was there, Jeremy Hunter, who's still there, all awesome guys. And yeah, just come to appreciate them. I mean, even more, in my profession now, doing, trying to do, what they did, the best that they did it. I think even more of an appreciation of our coaching staff. We had coaches that cared about the kids on the team. And I know everybody says other coaches care about the kids, but I would put our staff up there, against, any in the country. It wasn't just, the guys that were, winning the wrestling matches, or, finishing on the podium in the NCAA tournament. They cared about all, 35 guys on the team, like, in the room, outside of the room, after college, after their wrestling careers were long done. And that's very much appreciated. I think that was something when I was looking, trying to figure out, where I was going to go to college, where I was going to compete. That's what made the decision easy. Like I said, my dad was my coach, and a teacher, and like, my family, we were brought up, with, it was very much about, school and, extracurriculars, in this case, wrestling. And that's kind of, how we, molded our life. And, and he kind of ran his, team, his program as kind of a family, where it's like, hey, everybody cares about everybody. And, you might have your spats, right? You might have your disagreements, but at the end of the day, it's a close-knit family. And that's kind of what I was looking for when I went to college. And I was very fortunate to find it, with Coach Johnson and Coach Heffernan.
Okay. Well, who are your favorite teammates, your friends?
Well, I mean, if I had lots of outstanding teammates. I mean, you're always end up being closer, I think, like to your class, right? Just because you're going through the same things, right? You're having that progression where, you come into college and you're the 18-year-old, wide-eyed kid and like trying to figure things out. And, and then you get to like that fourth and fifth year and like you don't have as much in common, with the 18-year-olds, coming in because like you're just in different stages of life. But guys that came in with me, Tyrone Bird, Cal Ferry, Kyle Ott was my freshman roommate, Pete Friedel. Actually, funny, you should, we're doing this interview today. Friedel now lives up in Baltimore, and he actually reached out to me yesterday about coming down and checking out some of our summer workouts. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. So I'm actually going to see Pete later today. But I lived with him for a few years in college. I mean, I think that's just natural that like, yeah, guys, that, you came in with, you end up getting close to.
Well, since you mentioned Pete's name, I just want to say my kid loved the fact that Pete wore pajama bottoms to warm up for wrestling. I mean, what was he thinking? I thought it was awesome too myself, but my kid just adored that.
That's Pete. Pete's a carefree guy. He's funny. He kind of beats to his own drum. Always has. Just very into reading. I mean, like just kind of out there. Very carefree, like spirit. Like he's a lot of Pete stories for sure. Yeah, he'll keep you on your toes for sure.
Well, you can go ahead and tell them if you'd like, but also be sure and tell him that he needs to be on this broadcast, Illini Legends.
I will let him know today.
Awesome, that's
I will tell him.
fantastic.
I'll pass along. Good word of mouth. My man, there's so many Pete stories. The one that jumps out at me, and again, I go back to like 18-year-old kids coming in and wide-eyed and trying to figure things out. Pete was one of those guys, and I remember him coming in his freshman year, and I think we were like, I don't know how far. I think we were maybe like 4 weeks into the semester or something. And I'm getting this secondhand. Obviously, I'm not in on the meeting, but I've heard this story enough times. Pete was meeting with our academic counselor at the time, a guy by the name of Tom Michael. He actually went on to be the AD, I believe, is still AD at Eastern Illinois, as far as I know. Great guy, awesome guy, and he's meeting with Pete, to talk to him about classes. Right, we're 4 weeks into the semester. The only problem was Pete didn't have any classes. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure if like he, financial, obligation or whatever, or something, they dropped a schedule. Like he never signed up for classes officially, but he had no classes. And we were like, I think it was like 4 weeks. It was like almost 4 weeks into the semester. And obviously Tom, is panicked, rightfully so, right? Because you're 4 weeks into the semester and, you're responsible for this guy, like, and he doesn't have any classes. So he's going to be playing some serious catch up. And I think the line, I think Tom at one point in the meeting was like, Pete, like, you don't have any classes, like really like, concerned. And I think Pete, like, from what I understand, like kind of like stopped, kind of looked at him and was like, I can understand your concern. and that was Pete, he just kind of beat to his own drum. And lo and behold, I figured it out, went on to graduate college. I mean, he's even done some post-grad education and stuff. So it's different, right? The 18-year-olds, to the 24-year-olds, to the 40-year-olds, like it changes for sure.
Well, that's what we want to get into next, because after college, you became a coach. And you've been to California, you've been to Pennsylvania, been to Washington, D.C. Tell us what that's like, herding these cats.
Yeah, coaching's funny for me. So in high school, like I kind of always liked helping like the other guys on the team. Always felt like, hey, if I could help, like if I could, help push guys in the right direction or help them like figure something out. Like I always enjoyed that aspect of it. But then like graduating high school and starting college, again, 18-year-old, right? Wide eyes, figuring things out. Well, like most of the kids I talk to today, it's like, well, what do you want to study? What do you want to do? It's like, well, the first thought is, well, I want to be able to make money for my family. I want to be able to provide for my family. I want to be able to make a good living so I can provide for my family. I was going to Illinois, it's like, okay, well, what can I do for that? Like, and the kind of the two things that jumped out at me were like engineering and the business school. And it's like, well, I know I don't want to do engineering. So sounds like business it is, and I had a really good high school economics teacher. So I enjoyed econ. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is interesting to me. Like, and that's how I got into it. And probably it wasn't until like the spring of my 4th year, I was a 5-year guy, redshirted my first year. But about the spring of my 4th year was when like I started to think like, man, maybe when I'm done, like maybe I might like to try and coach like at the college level, I had a decent understanding of what it would be like, not completely, but I felt like, decent understanding just having a dad, that coached and, kind of seeing behind the curtain, of, things outside of the wrestling room. So a lot of times, yeah, when people think about like getting into coaching, they just think of it as like practice, and teaching wrestling and like, and it's like that is such a small percentage of, what ultimately lands on your plate, like as a coach. But I ended up getting into it actually in a roundabout way. So I graduated, I finished, and as I finished, Mark Johnson, head coach at the time, reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested, in helping out like in academic services, right? Like being like a graduate assistant, right? Working in academic services, you can still come in, you can come and practice, you can, come to like coaches meeting, like anything you want to do, you want to see, essentially like kind of like baby stepping into the profession a little bit, right? And so I did my first year, I was a graduate assistant in academic services, worked with some of the guys on the team. And that was an experience in and of itself, right? Showed me a whole nother, aspect of it. Because I was, my siblings and I were always good students. School is very important, right? So like you always got good grades. So I got to see some of the struggles on that side of it where, kids maybe didn't have, kind of that upbringing, that support, that structure behind their academics. But after the first year, our academic counselor at the time actually took a job back, I think, from his home area. So then Johnson called me again and was like, "Hey, like, would you be interested in like being like the academic counselor? Like Tom Michael, had been, for Pete his freshman year." And I told him then, I was like, "Well, I don't. It's not something that I see myself doing like long term. Like I think coaching is really what I want to do." But I was there. I was working on my master's at the time. My younger brother was on the team. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I can, I understand this well enough to, I can help guys, get to class, get organized, right? Do their assignments, that type of stuff, right? It's like, okay, sure. So I did that for a year. Then my first coaching job was out at UC Davis. Worked with a guy named ILLINI Wrestling. Actually, just got back into coaching just at Humboldt State recently. If you saw that, really pumped for him. He's an awesome guy. I went from UC Davis to Stanford, first stint at Stanford. Worked for Jason Borelli there, who's working with still now. Then from Stanford, I went out. I was the head coach at Penn actually for 3 years, from 2014 to 17, University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Then I was back at Stanford for another stint with Jason. It's when they went through the whole saga of trying to drop the program, and we were entrenched in that battle. And then when the dust settled, from that, Jason had taken the job at American and, asked me, "Hey, would you be interested in coming with me?" I was like,
And
yeah.
that's your background right now. Your virtual background is from the
Where's
American
it? Whoop, whoop.
campus.
Yep, there it is. Yep. American University in Washington, D.C. And
That's
it's
right.
good. It's been good.
Well, what's your coaching philosophy, Alex?
It's tough to sum up. I like having discussions about different aspects of coaching and like how you approach, like I said, the different challenges, with the day to day, and even the long term, of what you're doing as a coach. I've definitely been influenced by great coaches, in my life. Like I said, my dad was my coach. Mark Johnson, Jim Heffernan. I mean, J.C. Brelli, who I'm coaching for now, Lenny Zaleski. I've been very fortunate to be around people that were not only, I mean, great, wrestlers and wrestling coaches in the sense that, they understood wrestling and training and how to, to bring athletes along and, help them achieve their athletic, goals. But I've also been around really good people, and I think that's probably been the most important and the most rewarding for me is I've you know, for whatever reason, I've just been fortunate to be around guys that, you know, not excel in both aspects, right? And could teach you to be better wrestlers, but also, you know, through that process, through those interactions, through that relationship, are teaching you to be, you know, a better person, you know, a better, you know, husband, a better father, you know, a better contributing member of society.
Well, and you just reminded me, one other thing you found at Illinois was your wife, isn't that right?
I did. Found her
So,
early, married her much later, but yeah,
and, and you
go
guys
ahead.
have children?
We do. We have 3 kids. I have boy-girl twins that are 8, and I have a younger son that turned 5 in May.
Do they like wrestling?
They love wrestling, but I think a lot of that is just like right now they only wrestle with each other and daddy and come to the matches. So like they're seeing the best parts of it right now. So hopefully they'll continue to like it, you know, as it gets a little bit more challenging. But yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you to tell us your best Alex Tirapelle wrestling story.
So from a competitive standpoint, right? Like when you're in the grind, obviously, like definitely the most memorable thing, like I'm most proud of, is when we won the Big Ten tournament as a team. Like Big Ten championship is the first time it had been done in like 50 years at Illinois, and like that was really rewarding. I was fortunate enough to be wrestling in the finals along with Pete Friedel as well. And looking at the kind of the points and where we're at and kind of who had what left, I felt like there was a pretty good chance if I won, you know, and if Pete won for sure, that like we were going to win. You know, we were going to win the Big Ten tournament, and it was going to be, you know, a pretty big deal for the program. I mean, quite honestly. And I was fortunate enough to win that match. I wrestled a guy by the name of Ryan Bertine from Michigan, who I wrestled a lot of times over college, 8, 9 times. And we went back and forth. So definitely wasn't, like a gimme by any means. I mean, competitive match, like just about all the matches we had. So that was definitely like, I think my most like memorable, like enjoyable, like, you know, competitive, like wrestling moments. Had some other funny ones. As a coach, I was coaching at University of Pennsylvania. I had a wrestler by the name Casey Kent, who was an All-American for me at 174 pounds, and we were wrestling down at the Southern Scuffle, and we were leaving. And I can't remember which round it was, but we were leaving from the tournament. I remember we were in the van, we were heading back home. I had Casey and a few other guys with me, and he had just been in a situation in a match where it was kind of one of those challenging situations, like decision wise. You know, and it was, I think it was the decision in the second period, versus like deferring or taking, a stance or whatever. And it's just one of those things where like there's no like definitive, like clear answer of what, strategically makes the most sense. I mean, I feel like I knew Casey really well. Like I knew his strengths as a wrestler. Like I kind of knew like how he competed and stuff, but I still wasn't like 100% sure. Like I was leaning the one way, but I wasn't 100% sure. So on the way back, like I asked him, I was like, Casey, I was like, remember, like this situation, like in that situation, like, like what would you want to do? Right. Like I wanted to get his buy-in, like, how can I put you like in the best position to be successful, right? To win the match, in that scenario, what do you want to do? And Casey's funny. He was an engineering guy, pretty a little socially awkward, but he kind of like put his head, kind of started thinking about it. He's like, like, I don't know. You just tell me. You just tell me what to do in that situation. And I just remember laughing at the time, like, okay, like we can go with that, like, reminded me actually of like Forrest Gump. If you're familiar with Forrest Gump, and when the drill sergeant asked him about, his sole purpose, like in the army, and it's like, to do whatever you tell me to do, and the drill sergeant's like, that's the best answer like I've ever heard. That I felt like that a little bit in that moment, but that still makes me laugh, like thinking back to that story.
Well, did it work?
It did, like it made me feel more confident as a coach, because it demonstrated like his like belief, and trust in me, like to put him like in the best situation possible. I mean, this is a guy that, he had wrestled in the NCAA tournament already. He hadn't been an All-American yet, but like he was, that level of kid. He was a good kid, right? So I mean, he had confidence. He knew his strengths. He knew, like his positions, things he was trying to get to. Like, that's why I, was asking him. I mean, he wasn't a green, true freshman, like trying to figure out his head from his tail. Like, I mean, like, I really genuinely wanted to know, like, hey, in that situation, like, where would you be the most comfortable? And he was just like, you just tell me, just tell me what to do, like, and I'll run with it. It's like, all right, we can work with that.
Let me ask you this, Alex. Tell us about what happened at Stanford.
Yeah. I'll try to talk in a little bit in generalities, just because it's a long time period, and I don't want to go into like my minute details. But essentially, I mean, you can look up now kind of the timeline of it. But we found out, yeah, I mean, we went into the pandemic, right? We were in COVID. I mean, people were, at home. We were away from the office, and then, in early July, I think July 8th, absolutely, actually. We just, yeah, found out, via like a last minute, Zoom call that, hey, we've decided that we're going to drop these 11 programs, and, there's no recourse. Like, we're not going to change our mind. Essentially nothing can change the outcome, right? The pandemic can, end tomorrow. Like, the athletic department can hit the Mega Millions lottery. Like, it is what it is. Like, there's nothing that can be done about it. And that was a shocker. I mean, that was definitely, came out of left field. I mean, it was a slap in the face for sure.
Well, Alex, that kind of pisses me off,
Yeah.
and I might cut this bit out here too, but what I'm hearing from Illinois and their athletic director, that pisses me off too. And one thing that really, really pisses me off is you don't go to an interview and tell reporters who are going to report on what you say that you're looking at 11 separate sports, which is what Whitman did. And that's just going to harm your programs, 11 sport programs, as they try to recruit. But okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Sidebar.
yeah, no. I mean, I can't comment on Whitman. I haven't worked underneath him. I watch him from afar, being like, an Illinois fan, right? Like, I followed the athletic department, and I hope, that they do well, for them, because I want my, alma mater to do well. And, I still got a lot of people, tied to the wrestling program. I mean, specifically, I mean, I was on the same teams with Mike. I mean, like, I want those guys to do well, for them and for the future of the program. But yeah, I mean, your communication at that point, for an athletic administration, I mean, you get to that point where you're communicating that type of stuff, like, it's usually bad news, right? I mean, because like you've already kind of, made some level of decisions in your mind that that things are going to happen, right? Because otherwise, yeah, you're not gonna let that, those cats out of the bag, because it does damage programs, right? When people want to know, that even if it's not the case, I mean, they want to feel like, the programs are on, firm footing, right? That the coaching staff supported, that they're going to have the resources that they need, to accomplish what they're telling your kid, that, hey, we're going to help you do. So, and I understand a little bit, the kind of I don't want to say the song and dance, but like the position of athletic administrators, it's tough for sure. It is tough. But it's also, it's unfortunate a little bit that I think in this day and age that college athletics, I think we've started to get away from, what I felt like always, what was the initial mission, college athletics. It's become, trying to chase that, that next dollar, right? That elusive dollar. And unfortunately, like, that doesn't always lead to the best decisions. And there's going to be casualties, to those actions. And it's really unfortunate. I mean, getting back to the Stanford situation, where, you have like, you have someone or a group of people, kind of making a decision like that impacts, in Stanford's case, a program that had been around for 100 years. It's a 100-year-old program, and we're going to let one person or a small group of people to decide, like, whether it will continue to exist or not. Like, it's like, in my mind, like, that just seems like, that seems dumb, right? That's short-sighted. Like, that's like an incentive problem, right? You set up someone, to fail if they feel like, that's in the best interest, of the athletic department. So that was a hard pill to swallow for us. And quite frankly, I mean, we just didn't. I mean, they told us that, that there's nothing we could do and the programs are gone. And I mean, basically immediately we got off the Zoom call, with the athletic administration, and immediately got on a call with the rest of the coaching staff, myself, Jason Pirelli, Ray Blake, Kerry McCoy, it was coming out to work with RTC then, and just essentially we're just like, well, like this ain't happening, like not, not on our watch, like not while we're here, we're gonna, we're gonna try to help them figure this out, like, because this is the wrong decision, we're gonna help them like fix this problem, and then it went through an evolution, not to go get an incredible detail, but initially, the communication was, well, it was COVID and there was uncertainty and we don't have the, the financial resources, right, to support these programs, so we went into like fundraising mode, and mobilizing like, our alumni, our donors, essentially anyone, that cared enough, kind of put a pledge, their money, kind of where their heart was type of thing. But it eventually evolved, right? And it became pretty clear, at some point I think we had raised, man, 12 and a half, I think we had $12.5 million in pledges. And at that point, when they were still like, no, like that doesn't matter. Well, it became very clear that, it really wasn't about money, it was, about something else. So then it was the battle of like trying to, talk to people, find people in positions of, access that could like, have the conversations that we needed to get at like the root of the problem, right? Like what, what really is the issue? Like, why are we getting rid of these 11 programs? Like, if it's not really finances, and at the end of the day, I think it would be fair to say that, hey, the leadership, at the time just wanted to cut the pie into smaller pieces, right? I think they have 37 sports now. Like they were proposing going to, 25. And it's like, hey, we have 25 sports. We have the same pie. We'll cut it up into 25 pieces. Everybody will get more, Now we know that's not actually the case. Typically in those situations, only, two of the pieces get significantly bigger, and that's usually football and basketball. But it sounded good, right? It was a good, soundbite. And I just think that they, I think in their planning, right, and their like kind of research and trying to like judge like the potential like blowback, and response, like they just drastically underestimated, the wrestling community, the alumni, the donors, and the wrestling community as a whole.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's I tell you, I mean, yeah, you say like, oh, don't want to open up like old wounds. Like it was one of that experience. I mean, that like 9-month period, like I mean, it was one of like the worst periods of time in my life, but also like one of the best. Like because like we went through the trenches, with those guys. I mean, I have deeper connections, deeper relationships, bonds, with my colleagues, and our wrestlers, from that team than like, than anything, because I mean that's how you build those deep bonds.
It was existential. It was life or death. And
Yeah.
then you had Shane Griffith too, winning a national championship, putting Stanford back on the map there. And that, I guess, had to help.
It did from so we had done a lot up to that point, and we had a lot of momentum. And at that point, actually, by the time we got to NCAAs, I mean, we had gotten like, not only had like the 11 programs like unified, but they had like unified with like the rest, with like alumni, and donors from the 25 programs that were being kept. Those guys were upset. They were like, hey, like, what's going on here? Like, no one said anything to us about like, that, oh, the department's hurting for money. We need money, or we're going to drop these teams. Like, we would have wrote checks, right? I mean, it's Stanford, right? I mean, their alumni do well. They do well. They typically have, kind of that like, I need to give back, instilled in them. That's the type of place, Stanford is as a whole. So they were upset. So like, it was a real like unified, like kind of angry, group, that I think the university or kind of the leadership was just hoping to kind of outlast, right? I think they were like, well, this will be a problem for 3 or 4 months, and if we don't like give it any attention, right? If we don't like stoke the fire, then essentially like people will just get tired, right? Which I mean is a fair strategy. I mean, like honestly, it is very tiring, like to keep people, engaged and I would say like active, over a 9-month period, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people want to see progress, right? It's human nature, to wear down. So yeah, I think they were just kind of trying to outlast us, and then yeah, we're fortunate enough that Shane had a great finish and win the national tournament. Jaden Abbas was an All-American. We had other guys wrestling there around the 12, winning matches. A couple guys in the round of 12, I think. So like we just had a good year, honestly, despite the circumstances, the absolutely horrible circumstances. I mean, we had one of the best years, in the program's history, which I truly believe would have been better if we didn't have, the massive, uphill, battle, that we had to work against. But yeah, Shane won the national tournament. Got a lot of, eyes, ESPN, not only like just in the wrestling community, but just in the broader kind of college athletic sphere, and coming back out of that, like there was felt like there was a little bit of a shift. Like I said, we had the strategic relationships where people had access to like higher level conversations, and all of a sudden like the tone kind of shifted, right? The tone kind of shifted to there's nothing we can do to, well, if hypothetically, if that were to happen, what would it look like, kind of thing. And then they had to, jump through some hoops to ultimately get them to put out that, hey, we're keeping the program. And
That's a big tone shift.
yeah, it is, right? I mean,
going from never to, well, maybe. That's
yeah,
huge.
yeah. Hypothetically, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I take a lot of pride in that. I tell people now. I mean, we went from them telling us that essentially that program had no value to, I mean, look at them today. I mean, not only the program still exists, like it's thriving. Like I expect them to have like maybe their best year ever, this year. I mean, they have a lot of talent. They have, they're doing really well. So definitely take some gratitude from that for sure.
Yeah. Well, another question I wanted to ask was you wrestling, I guess it was your 5th year. You're wrestling Mike Poeta in practice every day. Was it every day? Who was your practice partner?
I don't think I definitely wasn't a guy that oh, I had to go with like the same person every day. Like I said, we were very fortunate. We had good rooms. I mean, we had good guys, to wrestle with. I mean, I definitely always had guys, that could give it to me, on the days where I wasn't at my best. So it's like, yeah, it wasn't like, well, this is my practice partner and we went together every day. It's like, I mean, I could go down, wrestle with the 41s, the 49s, up as high as 65, 74s. I mean, like, we had some good guys, a lot of good guys.
Well,
I was able to train with Mike. I was obviously able to train with Troy when he got there. Trained with Adam when I first got there. Matt Lackey stuck around. I mean, obviously, Pete Friedel. I mean, that's a little bit. Brian Glenn. Glenn was a little bit much for me. He was pretty fit. He was pretty physical. But yeah, we just had a lot of guys. That helped push you, and that's a big part of being able to do what we did.
Well, the way I look at it, Alex, is this. It's a wrestling match is like you might remember that show back about 10 years ago called Battle Bots. You've got two machines going at each other. They have different weapons, and which weapon is going to win in the end.
Nope.
And for example, you and Poeta, two very different machines.
Very different.
Speed versus technique. And I mean, you had lots of speed too, and he had lots of technique as well. But these were two different machines, so that's fascinating to me. How you guys went at it.
Yeah, and I think hopefully, we brought out the best in each other. And yeah, Mike, I mean, was a fantastic wrestler. I mean, probably still is, pretty darn good wrestler. But it was technical, it was explosive. I mean, it was dedicated to his craft. He was a very good wrestler. So it was, when training with him, I mean, you had to be, on your A game, and then, I was fortunate enough, after finishing, being able to stay around for a couple of years while he was competing, and continue, wrestling with him, occasionally as an alum, and watching his career. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of an iron sharpens iron thing. It's funny to say about the BattleBots like comparison, like, because I am very much of like, hey, like the soundbite, the soundbite nowadays, right? When you ask guys, like, especially like high school kids, like what's your philosophy or your approach or whatever. And it's just like, I'm just gonna go out there and try and score points. And it's like, well, that sounds great. That's a great soundbite, and if you're better than the guy, if you're just that much better, like that works. Right. But when the levels start to get a little more even, if you just like, go balls to the wall and throw, the kitchen sink at the guy, and it's like, it might work, but it might not work for you, right? Like that's when hey, you're wrestling a guy, like that's when you see like the world level, right? Guys that are trying to be like the world champion, the Olympic champion. It's like those guys don't just go out and just like do whatever comes into their head. Like you watch their matches, like they're trying to get to the same positions, over like and over again. Right? It's very, very few times you see the guy that's the Swiss Army knife. It's a different person every time he steps on the match. Like it just doesn't exist in our sport, right? There's a reason you practice, and rehearse like the patterns and the positions like that your strengths are, and then the guy that that's able to keep more of the match in those positions usually wins. Like that's the game.
That's very smart. That's very smart. Very technical too. Uh, the last thing I wanted to bring up, and I may or may not do this, but I saw uh, all your headshots on the internet. I can't find much video or pictures of you, and that makes me sad. But but I saw all these headshots, and it looks like it's the same headshot wherever you're at in Penn, at UC Davis, at American. It's like they Photoshop clothes on you in a different background, and I've decided to put you in different backgrounds at the end of the video and play some elevator music because I
Nice.
think that's going to be fun.
I like it. I like it. I bet, depending on which ones they were. So like when you move, when you take a new job, a lot of times, yeah, they use your old headshot and they'll like try to like, yeah, kind of change the color so it looks more like kind of where you're going. Like definitely, I would suspect like going from Davis to Stanford, they probably did that, and going from Stanford to Penn, yeah, I would say they almost certainly did that. Then it becomes like, yeah, like how often do you take a headshot? Like I'll probably do it like every 2 or 3 years. But
Well, see, that's the funny thing to me, and I know it's kind of minutia here, but it's funny because you must have so much discipline to know how to take the same headshot to tweak your smile exactly right to make yourself look that way every time. It's perfect.
for me, most of the time, it's about trying to keep my eyes open and smile, because you can tell when I smile, my eyes, disappear. Squint.
Well, Alex, it's been a blast. Uh, Thank you so much. You were inspiration to both me and my kid, and you were an inspiration to a lot of Illini fans. Have a great rest of your career. Win some national championships with your wrestlers, and good luck to you, sir.
Thanks, I appreciate it. And when I see Frito later, I'll definitely pick his ear and say, hey, you should consider going on this interview. I'm sure he will.